Thanks a lot for the invitation. It's great being here. And basically, I'll take only 5 minutes, 10 minutes to brief recap. I am heading a transport planning firm which is based in Milan and Moscow and New York. And we do, the vast part of our work is international. And what you see basically in red are the areas where we've been working in the last 5 to 6 years. Very briefly, I just wanted to say that, just give you a quick sense of what we do in terms of work. This is the Surface Transport Master Plan of Moscow. It's basically the revision of the Surface Transport Master Plan. I'm bringing this to the table. It's currently operation, has been deployed, is there. And the reason why I'm showing this is because I do believe that there is an issue of reconfiguration of the Surface Transport Master Plan, but above that, I think there is the issue of starting thinking about redistributing surface transport space that has been traditionally given to the car. For instance, here it's another project that we've been working on recently in Moscow. Clearly, we looked at this is the previous and before. I don't know if you go back with this. So it's the previous and before. We did it with West 8. We basically took a very large road and we revised it completely. I mean, clearly the space is now we think more balanced. It could definitely become even better, but it was a great attempt of the city to improve the quality. This is the Gardner Ring that wraps around the city, and I like this picture because it's emblematic of representative of the project. The section before and after. We removed 4 lanes on each direction, and we expanded. If you look at the sidewalk, we expanded how does the laser work? We expanded, we compressed the space to the side. So again, it's about space redistribution. We're also very engaged in pedestrian environment, so we've been working with the Expo 2020. We've done the crowd modeling for the centerpiece for Andrea Smith and Gordon Gill architects. So the entire sort of strategy of the crowd movement within the central heart of the Expo 2020 was carried out as we were developing the project with the architects. And finally, we've been working a lot on with Audi on the impact of new technologies and driverless technologies. I'm talking about this because this is also comes with the thinking that we've been putting together in a minute for the project I'm going to show you. And clearly, there's going to be a massive impact of driverless in our cities. This project was about parking and how a parking can be actually revised and compressed. You see here, you can go down to 62% in terms of space if you start using parking facility occupied by driverless vehicles, because they can park and compress in a much tighter space. So now I come to the Venice Biennale project that I think is trying to bring few things together. It's trying to connect the dots, as somebody else has said, and it's been a project that we developed. I'd like to thank Mario Cucinella for inviting me now a couple of years ago to come along with some suggestions on the idea of how to connect the archipelago Italia. The idea was to look at the areas where, like in a way, the negative of the metropolitan areas, the areas that are currently losing population, the areas that are currently maybe also losing some economical cutting edge, and how to relaunch it. But clearly, to relaunch it, you need to access those areas. It's of paramount importance of any kind of reconfiguration of a territory to have the ability to access it. So we asked ourselves, what is the way of accessing it? What is the impact on new technology? If we imagine the future of accessibility in the diffused territory, what is the role that new technologies will play? And we know that we are going through massive revolution, the electrical, the sharing, the autonomous. Those are the 3 big topics that are coming as the element of change. And we also know that once that used to be a very strong dichotomy, public and private, is now becoming together, is merging, or at least there are so much more nuances to the industry. And we also know that traditional cars, are taking a lot of space. This is a picture from the great Jared Walker, who is a transit consultant based in Portland. To the right, to the left, you see the private mobility and the same amount of people that consume obviously completely different space in city. But then if you think, okay, but the electric cars, you know, the three big topics, electric cars are coming, things will change. Well, not really. It's not going to change because, you know, it's electric, but it takes the same space. And well, like Uber, Lyft will come and things will change. And not really, because Uber, Lyft takes exactly the same space. Well, autonomous car will come, and no, will not. It will always take exactly the same amount of space, because if you close yourself in a box, you can negotiate a little bit the space, the distance, you can optimize it, but still a box with some safety standard, a certain amount of space that you take. So there is no way new technologies will solve cities and the way we move around cities by keep on moving in our cars, because it's a matter of space. And space, unfortunately, cannot be compressed. So first thing is, maybe in dense city, we should start thinking about the possibility of looking at other ways that are moving around, to move around without going into cars. So what does this mean? It means that it is true, this is in red you see the car usage, and in black the density. This is very true when it gets to the heart of the cities, where space is actually precious and is space that you have to give to other users. But the truth is that as you move out, the space becomes less relevant. And if you start thinking about the metropolitan areas in which, you know, the area around the area around the city is expanding, then you have to connect the different metropolitan areas. And throughout the last 100 years, this connection has been happening first with the rail, then with the cars, and finally with the high speed. So, you know, the idea is that what can we do to connect the rural areas? What can we do to connect areas that are not the metropolitan area if I'm actually crossed with the tube? The tube and the sponge is a metaphor that was used by Bernardo Secchi, a great urban planner. The tube means that you are connecting from one area to the other, and you don't interact with the surrounding. You basically cross in a zooming hyperloop through the space without connecting to anything around you. And the idea is that, well, the high speed is actually going in the same direction. The high speed is unfortunately moving in the same direction. And so what we think will happen in the near future? Well, we think that in the near future technologies will change, and the traditionally heavy infrastructure rail will change. You know, the precision driving that rely upon trucks will be taken by driverless technology. The energy will be stored on board, and those systems will be run on the street. In the same time, there will no need to have this massive one-way strong component that revolves around going from A to B with large numbers, but we will have to have a much more responsive capacity, because we are basically exploiting the road network, because we are having this driverless technology. We can have the level of service of the rail, but a much more distributed distribution of the demand. Finally, I would like to point out, and then I'm wrapping up, that also traveling has generated different kind of shapes. So we see Copenhagen here from the historic development, then the expansion of the core development, then the famous hand that was revolving about suburban rail, and then in the 70s and the 80s, the fingers of the hands started filling up because of the access provided by cars. And this is a study that we did in Helsinki some time ago. You know, this is, as we were saying for Helsinki, the stellar shape of transit that revolves around backbone of mass transit against the accessibility that is provided by a more isotropic connection that revolves around the cars. So when we think about the future, how do we imagine the future will happen? Well, we imagine that the road network will be populated by this new transit network that will be laying upon the existing road network. So our suggestion was for the future of Archipelago Italia was, rather than going on and adding major infrastructure, other than adding constant point-to-point connectivity, rather than keep on accelerating, which I believe is completely wrong. You know, we made massive mistake in keep on accelerating, and the acceleration is for fewer and richer people. You know, the Hyperloop, in my opinion, will be targeting a very sort of thin layer of society that will zoom in a capsule. But the truth is that what we want to do, we want to actually have a broader possibility to access wider area, to provide public transport to a broader group of people. And if I look at, for instance, Bologna, and I look at the way Bologna works in terms of transport, I'll see that Bologna, like all the cities on transport, works on directions that are based upon the direction of the rail, the express connectivity for the rail. So again, we can recognize a stellar shape that is based upon rail. And then if I go up from 1 hour to 1 hour and a half, the stellar shape gets larger. And then if I go to 4 hours, it becomes larger. And this is the structure of the rail, and this is coming also because of the arrival of the high speed that takes you down to Rome and to Naples. Well, we think that we can actually maybe move away from that, and we can use the existing road network to provide a completely different kind of connectivity. So what you see here, for instance, is the connection that is coming from a transit system. So this is, for instance, 1.5 hours by rail, and this is in 1.5 hours that would be relying upon the road with our new technology. So 1 hour by rail, stellar shape, and 1 hour laying the new transit network, driverless, electrical, on the existing road network, so no new infrastructure, new technologies applied on the existing infrastructure. And we see how the shape changes, and we see how the territory can be accessible in much wider area. We see how the new technology will allow these territories that are currently inaccessible to become part of the game, and we see how maybe we are at the verge of a new systemic change that will move away from systems that are based upon the strong mass rapid transit alignment to a much broader, much more isotropic, and hence much more geometrically equal in all the direction system of accessibility. So for the Venice Biennale, there's still 1 week to go if you want to fly over. We showed this, and we did this exercise for various cities around Italy, just to prove that the new transport that we imagine based upon new connectivity about the new patterns will allow those areas which are currently inaccessible to become accessible. So what is the future of transport? What are the infrastructure to invest upon? We believe that the way or what has to be addressed upon is the road infrastructure. The redistribution of the road infrastructure is the key to the future. On this infrastructure that is there, that is massive, that has been developed in the last decades, we can apply a new generation of transit, and we can envisage a possible systemic change for the accessibility of the future. Thank you.